I Wear My Sunglasses at Night. Written by Paul Aster Cohen. Narrated by Nicky. Chapter 13. Nicky was singing a song to herself while she dried her hair, already wearing the sunglasses, when she felt the coyote's panic. She threw open the bathroom door and saw Shecky standing on the bed, his eyes wide and frightened. "What is it, boy?" Shecky howled. Her bare feet battered the concrete and gravel as she tried to button her shorts, attempting to run faster than the tracking coyote. Nearly out of breath, Shecky howled loudly when they reached the tavern. Without stopping, Nicky ran past the coyote and tore through the parking lot and burst through the door. Splinters of wood rained down on shapes of men huddled around a small figure. Tiny reflective eyes focused on her as they dropped the shape with a wet thud onto the floor. The coyote skidded into the room behind Nicky and saw his master, pale and bloodless, laying lifeless at the men's feet. The hair on Shecky's back shot up into the air. He growled a fierce, foaming snarl and prepared for a fight with death in his eyes. For a moment, the men stared at their new guests as wine glasses hanging from above the bar clanked back and forth. White discs blinked back at Nicky and Shecky in the dark, waiting for the other to make the first move. A wine glass swung loose, fell, and shattered on the bar. With a burst of movement, the men rushed toward Nicky and the coyote, baring their fangs, stained with the dwarf's blood. Nicky's own serrated teeth glistened in the low light as she bolted forth to meet them. The first one lunged at her, but she ducked, grabbed his long coat, swung him over her head, and smashed his face into a bar stool, turning it into shards of wooden weapons. She picked up one of the legs, tossed it into the air, caught it with her other hand, and using it as a makeshift stake, slammed it into his back and twisted it. In a hail of exploding body parts, she ripped it out, leapt at the next one, smashed him in the nose with one end, spun around, and buried it deep into his chest. She kicked the beast coming at her into the others as she showered the tavern with more bursting, bloody gore coming from behind her. She began thrusting the stake around towards her attackers, complete with kicks and elbows and fists and headbutts, trying like hell to hit her mark. One by one, she redecorated the tavern with liquid carnage, meat chunks, and bits of bone shoved in tattered clothes. Shecky clawed and ripped at the flesh of others as he made his way to his master, stopping in front of the motionless dwarf where he set his paws hard on the wooden planked floor and stood guard, growling madly. Nicky began slipping and sliding on the blood and guts splattered all over the floor, allowing one of the men to grab her and toss her high into the air, across and over the bar, destroying all the liquor bottles on the shelf. Another man jumped on the counter, teeth protruding from his skull and drooling wildly, ready and looking for death, but found Nicky already on her feet. She swiped the man's legs, causing him to fall hard onto the bar, and shoved the wood deep into his chest. So deep, it burst all the way through to the other side of the counter. She pulled on the stake, but it wouldn't give. She huffed, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and ducked down under the bar as the man exploded above her. When Nicky appeared yet again, she was holding 2 bottles of liquor, one in each hand. She threw them at the feet of a wounded vampire shuffling towards her, snapped a book of matches between her fingers, and grinned. The burning book of matches somersaulted in the air, falling at his feet, engulfing his lower half in flames. She slammed her hands on the countertop, trying to leap over the bar when she felt a massive hand on her ankle. Another beast, larger than the rest, had grabbed her and violently tossed her clear across the tavern, smashing her into the thick stucco wall where she stuck. Before she knew it, he rushed up to her and delivered a flying kick to her stomach, sending her further into the wall, then with sledgehammer fists repeatedly mashed her face into a bloody, pulpy mess. She kicked at his face blindly, cracking some teeth which sent him flailing back and allowing enough time to pull herself free, falling to the crimson-soaked floor. The vampire on fire danced around, trying to put himself out, behind the gargantuan man-beast she was facing. She could feel her jaw and cheekbones shifting and popping back into place as they charged towards one another. Nicky hit the ground, slid across the slick floor on her behind, and kicked one of his kneecaps, sending it folding in the opposite direction. He hit the floor with a growl of pain as Nicky leapt to her feet and brought the heel of her foot onto the back of his head, sending his face towards the floor and causing his fangs to get stuck into the wooden planks. She reached over, grabbed a bar stool, and slammed it down on top of him, 2 of the legs piercing his torso. The large beast thrashed and squealed and shoved hard against the ancient wood, attempting to free himself. Nicky slammed the legs of the stool in again and again and again until he popped in a glorious red velvet display. Another man ran up from behind her, scooping her up in a reverse bear hug. The back of her head pummeled his nose and teeth as she grabbed his arm and tossed him over her, ripping off his arm in the process. She began beating another attacking vampire with the appendage over and over until it slipped out and began flailing around on the floor. Another beast leapt at her from the bar, but she simply grabbed him by the crotch and tossed him into a massive pair of mounted deer antlers. She looked down at her hand, still clutching his personal property in her hands. "Gross," she uttered, tossing the family jewels onto the floor with a splat. She turned to the man on fire as blood and vampire pieces erupted out from the mound behind her, quickly realizing that somehow antlers work as good as stakes. The vampire on fire hissed at her and laughed his attack. She kicked him back against the bar, delivered an uppercut that snapped his head back and spun him around, then repeatedly smashed his face against the counter's edge, distorting his human features like putty. She saw a knife laying on a nearby cutting board, limes sitting on top, and grabbed it. As the vampire gurgled and spat, she sawed halfway through his neck, then when she got to bone, ripped it off from the rest of his body, which fell limp onto the carnage-soaked floor. Nicky's blood-soaked shirt clung to her small breasts as her chest heaved heavily, and she gasped, trying to catch her breath, holding the snapping head by his hair at her side. She watched as a few of the vampires, some missing limbs, others bags of broken bones, tried to limp out of the tavern. She slammed the head on the bar with a wet thump. Nicky stomped towards them and, without stopping, grabbed a chair, smashed it over a table, and plunged the wooden pieces into their chests from behind, one at a time. She turned and made her way back to the bar as the gory fireworks exploded behind her. The head continued to snap from the bar, and she grabbed it by its hair again and smacked him hard across the face and spat behind gnashing teeth. "Behave, damn it!" She turned her focus to the dwarf, being watched over by Shecky. She thought he looked so much smaller laying there in the center of the room. She couldn't hear him anymore, his words, his thoughts. She knew he was gone. Letting out a long sigh, she slowly walked over and knelt near the dwarf. "Hey, you," she said, brushing aside some strands of his comb-over. "I'm sure you put up a good fight. They didn't fight fair, or else you would have taken them all out." Shecky looked over at her and licked her cheek. "We'll make sure those bastards pay for what they did to your family. You have my word. Even after I find Derek. You can rest now, Tully. You did good work. We're proud of you, little man." The walk back to the motel seemed longer as Nicky carried the head with Shecky solemnly following behind her, his head slumped down, ears laying low. In the motel room, she set the snapping, now cursing, head on the cabinet TV and sat down at the edge of the bed facing it. "Talk," she said, calmly but full of anger and rage. "Where can I find the rest of you? I figure from here on out all we're going to do is run into you dipshits because you're the only ones stupid enough to stick around. Or you have a plan for taking advantage of this particular sunless situation here." "You weren't even supposed to make it this far, bitch," the head spat. "We were all just stopping by for a bite when you showed up. That dude, that human guy, you're his girl, right? He ain't here. You came all this way for nothing." "Oh, yeah?" "We all figured you long gone by now. Why didn't you just take the money and run? Why are you chasing that fucking bum?" "Wait, what about the money?" The head paused, aware he said too much. "I didn't say nothing." Nicky leaned over, grabbed his hair, and smacked him, causing the head to spin around. "What about the money?" she said, setting the head back down. "Jeez, okay. Those guys who took him, they ain't my tribe, but I heard they were supposed to deliver a letter and some money so you wouldn't miss him so much. I heard he ain't here, though." "Who told you that?" "Just tribe gossip. All the tribes are here. It's feeding season. We're all scattered across the coast." "Which tribe took him?" "I don't know. Just fuck off and let me go." I don't think so." She leaned forward and gouged out one of his eyes, rolling it around in the palm of her hand. "Damn you, bitch." "I got all night. Tell me more." The head looked around with its one good eye at the coyote, then back at Nicky. "You know this isn't what you think it is," he said, blinking, trying to adjust to only seeing from one eye.
That guy you're after, maybe he don't want to be saved. Ever think of that? The leader of the tribe that took him, she's been known to take a liking to humans. Boys. Men. She's never taken a woman, so that tells you something, don't it? And you know what else? Maybe he left on purpose. Maybe to you it looks like he was taken because he's a pussy and just wanted a way out. You look like a bitch anyway. Not a bad-looking one, but one nonetheless.
The head flicked his tongue out at her. Nicky punched the head, sending it into the sheetrock wall, leaving a massive cavity. She grabbed it and set it back on the TV facing her.
Damn it, what the hell?
I didn't ask you about that. Where are they? He has to be with them.
If he's still alive, you mean?
I know he is. I can feel him or something.
You're fucking crazy.
She slapped him hard across the face, sending the head tumbling across the carpet.
Stop doing that.
She walked over, picked it back up, and set it down again. Where are they? Tonguing a chipped tooth, the head continued.
They're meeting in San Benito. Damn, just stop hitting me already. San Benito is what I heard. I would ask my buddy Cliff, but you exploded him. He said that before I showed up, there were a few of them that stopped by the tavern. Maybe yesterday. We're supposed to go from here further north a bit. This town was dead, so we figured it wouldn't harm nothing to hang around and grab a bite. We never had cover like this. The fire, the smoke. It's perfect.
The smoke blocks out the sun, the fire will burn up the bodies and leave no evidence. I already figured as much. So those refusing to evacuate and first responders, they're just food for you all.
For us, baby girl. Don't forget that you're one of us now. Find yourself a tribe and settle down. It's not all bad. It's actually pretty rad. Don't you like having all that power? Extra senses. You can move fast as shit. Turning into a bat?
Nicky cocked her head to one side.
Just kidding. Anyway, try it out. Nobody can mess with you anymore. You're basically invincible, as long as you stay away from stakes and the sun.
Nicky got up from the bed. San Benito is a few hours away, so we better get going, she said to Shecky, who was already on his paws.
You're one of us. Don't forget that.
Nicky zipped her duffel bag closed and threw it over her shoulder.
Hey, bitch, what about me? You can't just leave me here.
I'll deal with you in a bit. She whistled for the coyote to come, and she left the room. The vampire head looked around with its one eye and began screaming curses at her from behind the closed door. Nicky pulled into the tavern parking lot and told Shecky, I'll be right back. She entered the tavern littered with body parts, grabbed a piece of bloody bar stool off the floor, and slammed it into the chest of the headless corpse laying under the countertop. She walked away as the body exploded. Stopping at the car, she listened in the distance and heard a pop coming from the motel room and grinned. She got back into the car and they drove off towards the smoking mountains.